5 generations of my family have worked this ranch land. 160 acres of rolling hills, pine forests, and clear creek water that has been our sanctuary since my great-great-grandfather built the first cabin here in 1910. The main house now stands where that cabin once did, a sturdy 2-story farmhouse with a wide porch that wraps around 3 sides, perfect for watching the sun rise over the eastern pasture and set behind the western ridge. This land knows our footsteps, our laughter, our tears. Every fence post and barn board holds our history. My great-grandfather expanded the property during the Depression, when neighboring farms failed. He never considered it good fortune, just responsibility, taking on land others could no longer tend. My grandfather added the north pasture in the 50s. My father modernized the irrigation systems in the 80s. And when Sarah and I inherited the place, we vowed to preserve it for generations yet to come. Sarah loves this land as much as I do, though her duties as county sheriff often pull her away. She joined the department fresh out of college, rising through the ranks with unwavering integrity and dedication to community service. 10 years on the force, 3 as sheriff, the youngest ever elected in our county. Her badge represents everything we believe about justice and fairness. The community trusts her. I have always been proud to stand beside her. Our peaceful existence began to change 2 years ago. A development company called Evergreen Estates purchased the old Miller property that bordered our eastern fence line. The land had sat vacant for nearly a decade after Old Man Miller passed without heirs. No one in town had the means to buy such a large parcel. The company promised a harmonious rural community of luxury homes with carefully preserved green spaces. What they delivered was something entirely different. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a letter. Official-looking letterhead, Pine Valley Homeowners Association. I remember laughing as I read it. Our ranch was not part of any development. We had no homeowners association. The letter claimed otherwise. It outlined 17 violations of community standards and demanded compliance within 30 days. Fences too tall, equipment visible from access roads, unauthorized livestock structures. Each violation carried a $500 fine. I called Sarah at work, reading sections of the letter aloud. "This has to be a mistake," she said. "We are not under their jurisdiction. Ignore it." I did as she suggested, filing the letter away and returning to the seasonal work of maintaining fence lines and preparing for winter. More letters followed, each more demanding than the last. Then came the notices placed directly on our mailbox. From my porch, I began to notice unfamiliar vehicles driving slowly past our property. Men and women in pressed khakis with clipboards would stop, take photographs, make notes, and drive away. They never waved, never introduced themselves, just observed with clinical detachment as if cataloging specimens in a laboratory. Our neighbors began receiving similar notices. The Rodriguez family, whose modest farmhouse stood a quarter-mile down the road, found a citation for their holiday decorations. The Murphys, whose barn had weathered a century of harsh winters, were ordered to repaint it in an approved color scheme. The Washingtons, whose family had worked their land since Reconstruction, received warnings about their roadside produce stand. Something in the air had changed. An invisible boundary had been drawn around our community, not by those who lived here, but by outsiders who sought to remake it in their image. The freedom that defined rural living was under siege. And though I did not yet know the depths of their scheme, I could feel it. A gathering storm. The opening moves in a battle for our way of life. Spring arrived with a vengeance of paper and threats. Not the gentle renewal of seasons I had known all my life, but an administrative assault disguised as community standards. Each morning brought new violations tucked under windshield wipers or stapled to fence posts. The HOA had grown bolder, no longer limiting themselves to mail delivery. One morning, I discovered a notice claiming our historical barn, built by my grandfather's hands in 1955, was nonconforming to architectural guidelines and must be either modified or removed within 60 days. The fine was $2,000, with an additional $100 added for each day beyond the deadline. I stood in the dew-covered grass, reading and rereading the notice, trying to make sense of such an absurd demand. Our mailbox collection grew to hold dozens of these citations. Fence posts exactly 2 inches above regulation height, equipment visible from roadways, non-approved livestock enclosures, agricultural vehicles in plain sight, native plant species not included on the P-approved landscaping list. Each violation carried financial penalties that would have bankrupted us within months had we acknowledged their authority. Sarah advised caution, suggesting we document everything but avoid direct confrontation until we understood their legal standing. "This is harassment," she said over dinner one night, reviewing the growing stack of notices. "But we need to be smart about how we fight it." She wore the weariness of her badge even at home these days, the strain of balancing public service with our private battle evident in the new lines around her eyes. The Rodriguez family stopped by one evening, bringing homemade empanadas and their own collection of violations. Maria Rodriguez spread them across our kitchen table like playing cards in a losing hand. "They fine us for having my mother's rocking chair on the front porch," she said, pointing to one notice. "They call it unapproved furniture in public view. This is rural country. Rocking chairs on porches are our tradition." The Murphys reported similar troubles, the Washingtons, the Thompsons. Soon our kitchen became an unofficial meeting place for beleaguered neighbors comparing notes on the growing harassment. Pattern emerged. Properties closest to the new development received the most aggressive enforcement. Properties with road frontage or water access faced the highest fines. Properties owned by elderly residents or those living on fixed incomes were targeted with particular zeal. My first direct confrontation with the HOA patrol leader came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was mending the fence line when a black SUV pulled alongside the road. A man in his 50s emerged, dressed in khaki pants and a navy windbreaker with Pine Valley HOA enforcement embroidered on the breast. His silver hair was expensively cut, his shoes too clean for country roads. He approached with a clipboard and the practiced smile of someone accustomed to getting his way. "Mr. Thompson," he said, though I had never introduced myself. "I am Richard Blackwell, head of Community Standards Enforcement. We have noticed your continued noncompliance with association guidelines." I set down my tools and straightened my back. "Mr. Blackwell, my property is not part of your association. Never has been, never will be." His smile tightened. "I am afraid you are mistaken. All properties within the designated improvement zone fall under our jurisdiction. The county approved our expansion last quarter." "That is impossible," I said. "This ranch has been in my family for generations. We never signed any agreement." Blackwell consulted his clipboard. "New zoning ordinances allow for community standard enforcement regardless of original deed restrictions. I suggest you review the notices we have provided and begin bringing your property into compliance immediately." His eyes moved past me to survey the ranch. This kind of rural eyesore is exactly what our association was formed to address. That night, I began researching county records. Hours scrolling through digital archives and property maps revealed what I had suspected. The HOA had no legal jurisdiction over our ranch or most neighboring properties. Their claims were based on boundary maps they themselves had submitted to the county, maps that conveniently expanded their territory well beyond the original development. Further digging revealed the truth. Evergreen Estates was merely the public face of Meridian Development Corporation, a company known for acquiring rural properties, establishing restrictive HOAs, and then developing luxury communities that bore no resemblance to the rural character they replaced. Their tactic was simple: make life so unbearable for existing residents that they would sell at below-market rates just to escape the harassment. When I presented this evidence to Sarah, she grew quiet. "This is not just harassment," she finally said. "This is organized, systematic fraud." But when we attempted to file formal complaints with the county, we discovered that key positions in the Planning Commission were filled by individuals with connections to Meridian. Our complaints disappeared into administrative black holes. The HOA not only continued their enforcement, they doubled down. Budget cuts hit the sheriff department hard that summer. Sarah began working double shifts to compensate for reduced staffing. She would leave before dawn and return long after dark, sometimes working 36 hours straight during emergency situations. The circles under her eyes deepened. Our conversations grew shorter, limited to essential information exchanged during brief overlaps in our schedules. The ranch, once our shared sanctuary, became my solitary responsibility to defend. The harassment evolved during Sarah's absences. HOA patrol vehicles no longer limited their drive-bys to daylight hours. I would wake at midnight to headlights sweeping across our bedroom walls, illuminating the property as unk. Known vehicles idled at our boundary lines. Camera flashes punctuated the darkness. On 3 occasions, I found footprints in the soft earth beneath our office window, evidence that someone had been peering inside. I installed motion-activated security cameras at key points around the property: the driveway entrance, the barn, the approaches to the house. Within the first week, the footage captured what my neighbors and I had suspected but could not prove. HOA patrol members were trespassing on our properties after dark. The cameras recorded 3 individuals in Pine Valley windbreakers measuring our fence heights with laser tools, photographing equipment in our barn, and examining the foundation of our house. Most disturbing was footage from Thursday night. 3 patrol members entered our tool shed, photographed the interior, then placed something inside before leaving. The next morning, I discovered a small bag of questionable substances tucked behind my chainsaw. Their game had escalated from harassment to outright criminal activity, planting evidence they could later discover during an inspection. I confronted Blackwell the next day, showing him printouts of the security footage on my phone. We stood in the dusty road at the edge of my property, the summer heat baking the earth beneath our feet. His reaction told me everything. No surprise, no denial, only cold calculation as he assessed how much I knew. "You should be careful about making accusations, Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice low. "Especially when your property contains multiple violations that could merit county intervention. We have been lenient thus far, but since you will not comply voluntarily, we will need to handle things differently." "Is that a threat?" I asked. "Consider it fair warning." He straightened his designer jacket. "Documentation of violations sometimes requires thorough inspection. Your cooperation would make things easier for everyone." "Trespassing is a crime," I said. "So is breaking and entering, so is planting false evidence. I have it all on camera." "Cameras can be tampered with. Records can be lost. Rural properties experience all kinds of unfortunate accidents." He returned to his vehicle without another word, but his message was clear. The rules of engagement had changed. That evening, when Sarah finally returned home, I showed her everything: the footage of trespassing, the planted evidence I had carefully preserved, the pattern of escalating intimidation. For the first time, she viewed the situation not as my concerned spouse but through the lens of her professional training. The sheriff replaced the wife as she reviewed the evidence, her expression hardening with each revelation. "This crosses every line," she said, rewatching the footage of the men entering our shed. "This is criminal trespassing, attempted framing, harassment, conspiracy." She looked up at me, her exhaustion momentarily replaced by the sharp focus I had seen countless times when she tackled difficult cases. "Why did you not tell me it had gotten this bad?" "You have been working impossible hours," I said. "The department needs you. I thought I could handle this." Sarah set down her badge and gun, rubbing her eyes. "No more. Tomorrow I am taking this evidence to Judge Williams. We will get restraining orders against the entire patrol team." But tomorrow proved too late. That night, we installed additional security measures, reinforced locks on all doors and windows, motion sensors that would alert our phones to any presence on the property, floodlights at strategic points around the house and outbuildings. Our home transformed from a sanctuary into a fortress. Every creak of the old farmhouse now triggered alertness. Every distant engine sound raised alarm. Sarah cleaned her service weapon at the kitchen table, methodically checking each component before returning it to the lockbox beside our bed. "If they come onto the property again," she said, "call me immediately. Do not confront them alone." Neither of us slept well that night. The security system reported false alarms triggered by wandering deer and night birds. Dawn found us exhausted but resolved. The invisible boundary between harassment and criminality had been crossed. The stage was set for a confrontation neither side could back away from. We just did not know how soon it would come. Friday arrived with thunderheads building on the western horizon, promising the first real storm of the season. Sarah returned home at 7 that evening after working 32 hours straight. A multiple vehicle accident on the highway, followed by a domestic disturbance, had kept her department running beyond capacity. She staggered through the door still wearing her uniform, utility belt heavy with equipment. "I need sleep," she mumbled, setting her badge on the kitchen counter. "Just 4 hours. Then we can talk about next steps with the HOA situation." Her eyes were red-rimmed, her movements sluggish with exhaustion. I helped her remove her boots. She did not even change clothes before collapsing onto our bed, still in her tan uniform shirt and pants. Within minutes, her breathing deepened into the rhythm of profound sleep. Her service weapon remained secured in its holster, placed in the bedside lockbox as protocol required. I sat at the kitchen table reviewing our options. The evidence we had collected certainly warranted legal action, but Blackwell's connections within county government complicated matters. My thoughts were interrupted by a notification from our pantry. We were out of essential supplies, coffee, flour, the medication for Sarah's occasional migraines. The storm would likely last through the weekend, potentially leaving us housebound. The decision to make a quick supply run seemed reasonable. Sarah would sleep for hours. The grocery store was just 15 minutes away in town. I could be back before she even entered the dream phase of her sleep cycle. I locked the house carefully behind me, made sure the security system was armed, and drove down our long gravel driveway as the first fat raindrops began to fall. Something felt wrong immediately. Halfway down our access road, I noticed 2 unfamiliar vehicles parked along the tree line, a black SUV similar to Blackwell's and a white pickup truck with no markings. Both were positioned to be nearly invisible from the main road, headlights off, engines silent. I slowed as I passed, noting that both vehicles appeared empty. My stomach tightened with unease. The grocery store was unusually quiet for a Friday evening. The approaching storm had sent most residents home early. I moved quickly through the aisles, gathering only what we absolutely needed. An inexplicable urgency drove my movements. Something primitive in my brainstem whispered that I needed to return home immediately. I paid for the supplies and hurried back to my truck as lightning split the darkening sky and thunder rolled across the valley. The drive home took 11 minutes instead of the usual 15. Rain lashed the windshield as I turned onto our access road. The two vehicles remained where I had seen them earlier, still empty, still watching. I killed my headlights as I approached our driveway, an instinct I could not explain guiding my actions. Instead of pulling directly to the house, I parked behind the equipment shed, where my truck would not be visible from the main building. The security app on my phone showed multiple alerts from the previous 10 minutes. Motion detected at the side door. Motion detected at the office window. Motion detected in the back garden. I pulled my raincoat hood up and moved silently along the edge of the property, using the storm's darkness as cover. What I saw froze the blood in my veins. 3 figures in HOA windbreakers worked at our side door, the one leading to the mudroom adjacent to the kitchen. One held a flashlight while another worked with what appeared to be lock-picking tools. The third kept watch, occasionally speaking into a handheld radio. Lightning illuminated them briefly, confirming what I already knew. Blackwell stood among them, directing the operation with the confidence of someone who believed himself beyond accountability. My first instinct was to confront them, to rush forward shouting and drive them from my property. But something held me back. Sarah slept inside, exhausted and vulnerable. These men had already demonstrated their willingness to plant evidence. What else might they be capable of? And more importantly, what legal recourse would we have if I simply scared them away now? Instead, I retreated to the shelter of a large oak tree at the edge of our driveway. From this vantage point, I could clearly see and record their actions without being detected. Rain soaked through my clothing as I held my phone steady, capturing video of the break-in. The side door finally yielded to their efforts. One by one, the intruders slipped inside our home. My home, where my wife slept in uniform, unaware of the violation occurring just rooms away. My hands trembled as I dialed 911, keeping my voice to a whisper despite the storm noise that would have covered normal conversation. The dispatcher answered promptly. 911, what is your emergency? This is James Thompson at 1452 County Road 33, I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. 3 individuals are breaking into my home right now. I am outside the house watching them. They just entered through the side door. Are you in a safe location, sir? Yes, I confirmed, rain streaming down my face. I am hidden outside. They do not know I am here. Are there others in the house? My spouse, I said, heart pounding so hard I could feel my pulse in my throat. Sheriff Sarah Thompson, she is sleeping. She worked a double shift and does not know what is happening. The line went silent for a moment. When the dispatcher spoke again, her voice had changed. Sir, did you say Sheriff Thompson is in the house? Yes, I whispered, watching as flashlight beams moved through my home, visible through the windows. She is asleep in uniform. Her service weapon is locked up beside the bed. All available units are being dispatched, the dispatcher said, urgency now evident in her professionally controlled voice. Estimated arrival time 8 minutes. Please stay on the line and remain in your safe location. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating the scene like a macabre photograph. 3 intruders inside my home. My exhausted wife asleep and vulnerable. Rain pounding on my shoulders as I watched helplessly from the shadows. The HOA patrol had finally crossed a line from which there could be no return. They had violated the sanctity of our home, not knowing that inside slept the very embodiment of the law they were breaking. Inside our darkened house, Sarah stirred. 20 years of law enforcement had conditioned her body to respond to certain sounds even in the deepest sleep. The subtle click of the side door latch, the whisper of unfamiliar footsteps on hardwood floors, the almost imperceptible change in air pressure as intruders moved through enclosed spaces. Her eyes opened to complete darkness, mind instantly alert despite her exhaustion. She lay motionless, cataloging what her senses detected. 3 distinct patterns of breathing, hushed voices in the hallway, the beam of a flashlight passing beneath her bedroom door, the faint squeak of the office door opening across the hall. These were not the familiar sounds of her spouse moving through their home. She was not alone, and whoever had entered did not want to be heard. Years of training took over. With slow, deliberate movements, Sarah reached for the bedside lockbox. Her fingers entered the combination from muscle memory. The mechanism released with a soft click that sounded thunderous in her hyper-aware state. She removed her service weapon, checking it by touch alone, fully loaded, safety engaged for now. In the hallway, muffled voices conferred. "Check the bedroom," one whispered. "Blackwell wants photos of every room." Sarah rolled silently from the bed and positioned herself behind the door, weapon ready. She remained in her uniform, a fact that would prove significant in the minutes to come. Her exhaustion had vanished, replaced by the cold clarity that had carried her through countless dangerous situations during her career. In the office across the hall, drawers opened and closed. Paper rustled. Camera shutters clicked softly as the intruders documented their invasion. Sarah recognized the sounds of a thorough search, not the chaotic ransacking of common burglars, but the methodical examination of investigators looking for specific evidence. A floorboard creaked outside her bedroom door. The handle turned slowly. Sarah disengaged the safety on her weapon as the door began to open, admitting a thin beam of flashlight illumination. A figure stepped into the room, sweeping the light across the empty bed. Before the intruder could react to the unoccupied bed, Sarah moved. "Police, do not move. Hands where I can see them." Her voice carried the unmistakable authority of law enforcement. The flashlight beam jerked upward, momentarily blinding her before dropping to the floor as the intruder raised his hands. In the faint illumination from the fallen light, Sarah could see the HOA windbreaker, the clipboard that had clattered to the floor, the shock transforming the man's face. "Turn around, face the wall, hands behind your head, interlock your fingers." Each command was issued with precision born of countless arrests. The intruder complied, his body language conveying his stunned disbelief at the turn of events. "What is your name?" Sarah demanded, maintaining her position of tactical advantage. "David Keller," he stammered. "Pine Valley HOA enforcement. We have authorization to inspect." "You have authorization to break into a private residence in the middle of the night," Sarah interrupted, her voice cold. "You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you exercise it." Commotion erupted from the hallway as the other intruders realized something had gone wrong. Flashlight beams danced erratically as they converged on the bedroom doorway. Sarah maintained her position, weapon trained on the first intruder. "Police officer, drop any weapons and show me your hands. Do it now." Her command echoed through the house. For a dangerous moment, silence hung in the air. Then came the clatter of dropped equipment as 2 more sets of hands appeared in the doorway. "This is a misunderstanding," came a familiar voice. "Richard Blackwell. We are conducting a legitimate inspection of a property in violation of community guidelines." At night, during a thunderstorm, after breaking into a locked home, Sarah moved to where she could keep all 3 intruders in her line of sight. "You are trespassing in a private residence. You have broken multiple laws. Identify yourselves, all of you." Lightning flashed, illuminating the scene through the bedroom window. Three men in HOA windbreakers stood with their hands raised, faces transitioning from arrogant authority to the dawning realization of their predicament. Blackwell recovered first, his expression hardening into calculated defiance. "Sheriff Thompson," he said, recognition evident in his voice, "your property has multiple outstanding violations. As head of enforcement for Pine Valley HOA, I have the authority to document those violations." "You have no authority to break into my home," Sarah replied. "Face the wall, hands behind your back." "This is absurd," Blackwell protested. "Do you know who I am connected to in this county?" "Right now you are connected to breaking and entering, criminal trespassing and conspiracy," Sarah said, removing handcuffs from her belt with practiced efficiency. "Those connections will not help you." Outside, red and blue lights began to flash through the rain-streaked windows as patrol cars approached the property. I had remained on the line with dispatch throughout the confrontation, providing updates as backup rushed to the scene. When uniformed deputies entered through the front door minutes later, they found an unusual tableau. Their sheriff, still in uniform despite being officially off duty, had three handcuffed intruders seated on the hallway floor. Sheriff Deputy Martinez was the first to enter, weapon drawn until he assessed the situation. "Are you all right?" "I am unharmed," Sarah confirmed, professional demeanor firmly in place despite the personal violation. "These three broke in while I was sleeping. My spouse witnessed the break-in and called it in. I entered then, soaked from the rain but relieved beyond words to see Sarah safe and in control of the situation. The deputies secured the intruders while Sarah and I moved to the kitchen, where she could brief her team properly. What they discovered throughout our home painted a disturbing picture of the intruders' intentions. In the office, drawers had been rifled, documents photographed. More concerning were the items the deputies found in Blackwell's possession, small bags of suspicious substances similar to what had been planted in our tool shed days earlier. Camera memory cards revealed dozens of photos taken inside our home, along with images from other properties in the area. Most damning was a document found in Keller's clipboard, a falsified inspection report, predated and pre-signed, listing numerous fabricated violations that would have justified county intervention and potential condemnation of our property. The conspiracy was laid bare in black and white, undeniable even to those with connections in high places. As the deputies led the handcuffed men to waiting patrol cars, the rain began to ease. Blackwell maintained his arrogant silence, but his companions had already begun offering information in hopes of leniency. The night that had begun with an invasion of our privacy was ending with the dismantling of the scheme that had terrorized our community for months. Sarah stood on the porch watching the patrol cars depart, her exhaustion returning now that the adrenaline was fading. "This is just the beginning," she said, taking my hand. "Tomorrow we start unraveling everything." The flashing lights disappeared down our long driveway, leaving us in darkness broken only by the security lights surrounding our property. For the first time in months, those lights felt less like a fortress and more like a homecoming. The arrest of Richard Blackwell and his accomplices was merely the first thread pulled in a tapestry of corruption that had been woven throughout our county. Sarah recused herself from directly investigating the case due to the obvious conflict of interest, but her trusted deputies pursued the evidence with relentless determination. Each day brought new revelations, each more disturbing than the last. County investigators executed search warrants on the HOA offices, the Evergreen Estates Development Company, and Meridian Corporation headquarters. What they discovered confirmed our suspicions, but exceeded our worst fears. Evidence boards in the sheriff department conference room grew crowded with documents, photographs, and connection maps linking dozens of individuals to the scheme. The forged boundary maps we had discovered were only the beginning. Investigators uncovered fraudulent incorporation documents that falsely claimed our properties had been included in the original HOA territory. Meridian executives had created shell companies to purchase strategic parcels, establishing a foothold from which they could expand their jurisdiction through manipulation and intimidation. Most troubling were the internal communications recovered from company servers. Emails and text messages revealed explicit targeting of specific properties, ours among them, that Meridian deemed essential for their ultimate development plans. The Thompson Ranch provides creek access necessary for the luxury phase. One email read, "Maximum pressure advised. Elderly neighbors first for easier acquisition." The planted evidence found in Blackwell's possession was part of a broader strategy. Documents outlined a plan to manufacture code violations serious enough to trigger county intervention, potentially forcing residents from their homes through condemnation proceedings. Blackwell had not been acting alone or on impulse. He had been following a corporate playbook designed to systematically eliminate obstacles to development. 1 week after the arrests, we hosted a community meeting in our barn. Over 60 neighbors attended, many bringing documentation of their own harassment. The Rodriguez family, the Murphys, the Washingtons. Families who had worked this land for generations sat shoulder to shoulder, sharing stories of intimidation that had left them feeling isolated and powerless. Maria Rodriguez stood before the group, voice trembling with anger as she described finding HOA representatives photographing the inside of her home through windows while her children played inside. "I thought I was going crazy," she said. "I would find footprints outside my house, items moved in my yard. Now I know I was not imagining it." Elderly Mr. Washington, whose family had owned their property since 1889, described receiving violation notices for historical agricultural equipment visible from the road. The antique tractor his grandfather had used to work the land, now preserved as a family monument. The fines threatened would have consumed his entire monthly pension. As neighbors shared their experiences, patterns emerged that confirmed the investigative findings. Properties with water access had faced the most aggressive harassment. Elderly residents living alone had received the most intimidating visits. Families with children had been threatened with reports to child services for unsafe rural conditions. The local newspaper ran a front-page exposé the following Sunday. "Development scheme exposed. HOA used intimidation and fraud to force land sales." The article included security footage from multiple properties showing HOA patrol members trespassing, photographing home interiors through windows, and tampering with private property. My own footage of the break-in featured prominently, though Sarah's involvement was mentioned only in her official capacity. County commissioner meetings, normally sparsely attended, overflowed with angry residents demanding accountability. 3 commissioners with ties to Meridian Corporation submitted hasty resignations. The planning department director took early retirement as investigations into permit irregularities intensified. Judge Williams, untouched by the corruption, issued restraining orders protecting every property targeted by the fraudulent HOA. The investigation expanded beyond our county as state authorities discovered similar schemes in neighboring jurisdictions. Meridian Corporation's predatory development model had been refined over years of practice, leaving a trail of displaced rural communities across 3 states. Our small community had accomplished what others had not. We had exposed the machinery of corruption before it could complete its work. Most satisfying was the revelation that Meridian had specifically avoided investigating my household connections before targeting our ranch. Had they performed even basic due diligence, they would have discovered that the property they had selected as their prime acquisition target was owned by the county sheriff and spouse. Their arrogance had been their undoing. As summer faded toward autumn, the legal proceedings against Blackwell and his accomplices moved forward. The conspiracy charges carried potential prison sentences that no amount of corporate legal maneuvering could easily dismiss. Meridian executives found themselves facing both criminal charges and civil lawsuits from dozens of harassed property owners. What had begun as isolated harassment had revealed itself as an organized campaign to destroy our community from within. But in targeting us collectively, they had accomplished something unexpected. They had transformed a loose collection of independent rural homesteads into a unified community prepared to fight for our shared way of life. Justice did not arrive in a single triumphant moment. It came gradually, through months of court proceedings, community organization, and reclamation of what had nearly been lost. Blackwell and his immediate accomplices accepted plea agreements that included prison sentences ranging from 18 months to 5 years. The evidence against them was simply too overwhelming to risk trial. Meridian Corporation executives faced more complex proceedings. Some negotiated reduced charges in exchange for testimony against others. Civil judgments against the company mounted into millions of dollars as property owners filed suit for harassment, fraud, emotional distress, and conspiracy. The development that had threatened to swallow our community was permanently halted, the model home standing empty as legal battles consumed the company's resources. Our community did not wait for the courts to determine our future. In the aftermath of the break-in, neighbors who had once merely waved in passing now gathered regularly to share information and resources. The barn that had hosted our first meeting became a community hub where we drafted bylaws for a legitimate property owners association, one dedicated to preserving rural character rather than imposing urban aesthetics. Sarah implemented new training protocols for her deputies, helping them recognize and respond appropriately to HOA disputes. Homeowners associations serve a purpose in certain communities, she explained during a department briefing, but they can become vehicles for abuse when oversight fails. We need to protect residents from overreach while respecting legitimate community standards. I found myself in an unexpected role as community organizer, helping neighbors navigate the legal aftermath of the HOA fraud. Each weekend, our kitchen table hosted informal counseling sessions where targeted residents could review their documentation and prepare statements for investigators. The skills I had developed out of necessity during our own ordeal now served the broader community. Spring returned to the ranch with a different energy than the previous year. The security cameras that had captured criminal activity now watched over blooming gardens and grazing livestock. The fortress mentality that had dominated our lives slowly gave way to the open hospitality that had traditionally defined rural living. Most symbolic was the community gathering we hosted exactly 1 year after the night of the break-in. Tables stretched across our front yard, laden with potluck dishes representing the diverse heritage of our neighbors. Children played tag between barns that had once been photographed as violations. Elderly residents who had feared losing their homes sat,